Okay, good morning, good afternoon. Our next session is about focusing on the tool that is an in-house tool developed by FucyTech. Our focus is on how this tool simplifies the Tara process, automation of the damage scenarios, threat scenario generation, and enabling robust cybersecurity management for automotive systems. Before we dive into the tool, let's set the context here. ISO 21434 provides a comprehensive framework for ensuring cybersecurity in road vehicles. It emphasizes the identification of the threats and the evaluation of their impact, including cybersecurity goals, damage scenarios, threat scenarios, and risk assessment. We will see how each one of these steps are performed using our tool. Um, I also want to take a moment to understand what are the challenges in doing a manual Tara. We have seen many projects use Excel sheets to perform threat analysis and risk assessment. You know, the inherent as the project grows, it becomes really difficult to map the assets, threats, and damages. Deriving security goals and controls, and most importantly, as the system evolves over a period of time, reassessing these scenarios with evolving designs becomes extremely challenging to keep it up to date. So those are the problem areas that we solve using the using this tool, which also comes baked in with a lot of intelligence and also a lot of previous experience that is offered as a library as part of our tool. So the first step in the threat analysis and risk assessment is the item model and the asset definition, and identifying the cybersecurity property for each one of those item models. So here I've taken for simplicity, we have taken a simple battery management system, which consists of a microcontroller unit. This white box indicates that, and a cell monitoring board, which is responsible for capturing the voltage and the temperature information of the battery pack, and then sending all this information or the vehicle bus either through CAN-FT or Ethernet, and then the vehicle system is in turn connected to a cloud, right? But the cloud and the vehicle system is out of context for us, but the communication system is still part of the system which will be evaluated for cybersecurity risks. Here, this model is a very simplistic model of the BMS system because we are only focusing on the assets that we are interested in protecting in the system. For example, your bootloader, your application, your calibration, all of these are your essentially the firmware that needs to be protected in the system, because any malicious firmware that goes into the system can lead to hazardous or life threatening situation. Similarly, we have other assets that we have identified, such as certificates, keys that are used in your system. Your debug port, the JTAG port, is also an asset because you cannot leave that open or unprotected, because this can result into not only installation of the malicious firmware. The attacker could also extract the IP through this JTAG port, leading to loss of intellectual property. So this system essentially is a very simple system here, where the cell monitoring board is continuously monitoring the battery pack, and all the data is sent over the serial peripheral interface to the BMS system. The application is reading this data, monitoring the data, and then taking relevant actions, uh, uh, you know, uh, as when to open the contactor or close the contactor, and then it is also sending some of this information to the rest of the vehicle system in order to manage the entire BMS system. So as a first step, what we have done is we have identified the assets like I mentioned, And then each of the asset is marked with cybersecurity properties, such as in this case, for example, bootloader. You want to maintain the integrity of the bootloader. You want to maintain the authenticity of the bootloader, and you also want to make sure that it's already always available for the rest of the system. Now, these properties are part of defined in the ISO 21434. There are additional properties such as confidentiality, authorization, non-repudiation, and each one of them needs to be selected according to the system needs. For example, you could also add to provide another layer of protection. You could also say that my bootloader shall ensure confidentiality, and what it means to the end user is the bootloader will be encrypted on the system. So similarly, for the application, you could select the relevant cybersecurity properties, and same. Let me take another example here. So for example, let's say JTAG, along with integrity, authenticity, availability, I'm also adding authorization, which means only the relevant authorized people will be able to access this port. The calibration application has the same cybersecurity property as bootloader. But let's take another example of battery pack. The battery pack is basically a group of cells that are connected with each other, and they are enclosed in a box. Since it does not have any firmware, the only property that I can assign for this is availability. And so once you define a system like this, the next step you can also see on the left hand side of the window, all these cybersecurity properties are shown with these red dots. Okay. The next step is damage scenario. Here is where our tool helps the user to think about all the possible damage scenario. So if I click here, there is close to 32 damage scenarios that are identified by the tool. And if you read through each one of them, it is essentially asking you to check, okay, what happens if the integrity of the application is lost? What happens if the authenticity of the application is lost? And based on these properties or the loss of such cybersecurity property, you come up with a bunch of damage scenario. Hardware, firmware, system failure due to hardware software error. And if you look at the damage scenario here, you can see a loss of property of application, loss of the cybersecurity property on the application, the bootloader, the certificates, keys, calibration. Any loss of these assets would lead to a hardware software system failure. Similarly, CAN channel corruption. If you look at the next, if you look at the next one, the JTAG property here, referring to the third one here. So the compromise, any compromise in cryptography, right? In compromise of cryptography means if I choose something like an MD5 algorithm, which is already compromised or not recommended by NIST guidelines, then choosing an inferior cryptography standard can also result in loss of application, bootloader, certificates, and keys. And for each one of these damage scenario, you have to identify the impact on safety, the financial impact, operational impact, and privacy impact. And these, again, all of these impact ratings are defined in the ISO standard, and we are just following. The tool basically gives you that, you don't have to read through the ISO, you just have to follow along with our tool, and that guides you through this ISO process. And here you, based on the ratings that you select, the overall impact of this damage scenario is determined for the system. So as you can see here, the privacy impact is negligible in all the cases rather. The reason being, the BMS does not hold any privacy information such as your SSN number or driver license information or anything of that sort. And that's why this is the most low rated impact in terms of privacy. So the next step is your threat scenario. So again, our tool helps you to come up with automated threat scenario. As you can see here, we have identified 59 different threat scenarios based on the damage scenarios and based on the cybersecurity properties that you have identified. So what we do here as a next step is, again, this is defined in the ISO standard, where you are actually coming up with an attack vector for each of those threat scenario. And for example, here I have chosen tampering of the bootloader leads to firmware or execution of the malicious bootloader, right? So based on this threat, how is this threat realized? You have, it could be a supply chain attack, meaning somebody replaced your ICs while they were in a transit to reach before they reach the destination. Somebody tampered with those ICs, so there is a supply chain attack possible. Similarly, there is a social engineering attack that's possible, uh, and that could be done through either phishing or baiting. And this is how you analyze the different possible attacks, and you go through each one of them in detail as how those attacks could be performed. Similarly, there could be a physical attack such as a side channel attack. Maybe people are sniffing on your product, and based on the power consumption, they could tell whether it's an AES cipher that you have chosen for the product, and then that gives a hint to the attacker, and he can perform a more focused attack based on those type of information. Similarly, firmware reflash attack, you could be malicious firmware signing, or it could be, firmware during the reflash, somebody is inserting those, corrupting those bytes or changing the bytes during the process of flashing. And you see also these icons here, like this one, and every time you perform such a threat analysis or attack vector analysis, you can convert some of these events either into an attack or either to a requirement. So again, as defined in ISO, each of these attacks are further again rated based on the elapsed time, based on the expertise required to perform that attack, knowledge of the item, window of opportunity, and equipment. And you can see these are the drop-down parameters for this, and you can select based on the attack feasibility or based on the expertise required to perform an attack. The overall attack feasibility rating is determined. In this case, mostly all the attacks are very low or low, except for one, which is medium, because and it says the baiting attack. Like you send your targeted developers or targeted group of people could be actually led to a phishing attack or a baiting attack, and this is something very easy to do, with very less expertise, using some standard equipments. You could easily target certain audience to leading to compromised login and password information for your backend infrastructure, and that could lead to uh, lead to an attack on the firmware. The next step is okay, based on these attacks, this also so basically once you perform the threat analysis and the attack path analysis, you are deriving all the possible attacks on the system. You're also deriving requirements for the system. So based on those requirements, your software engineers go ahead and implement the software. The next final step here is also the cybersecurity goals, claims, and requirements. So your before the start of the project, you actually also put together certain goals for the project. You say, the BMS shall only boot with authenticated firmware or unaltered firmware. Integrity and authenticity of the BMS software shall be verified. So these are the high level goals which you could define for the system, and based on that, you are you will come up with what are the different control mechanisms in order to meet these goals. And based on all the threat analysis, you are coming with the requirements that are required in order to meet these goals. And there could be certain things that you may not be able to mitigate the risk. You may have identified them as part of your attack path analysis, but you may not be able to mitigate it because of certain limitations, either in terms of the compute power, maybe the memory could be a problem, or the overall timing of the project itself could be an issue. And those are the list of items that will go under the claims, which you're basically saying, hey, you have these attacks identified, but I will not be able to do for so and so reason. And this is the point when the cybersecurity approaches the management and gets a sign off from them, and then he's able to proceed with the implementation. We also are in compliant with the UNIC regulations, which also defines a bunch of guidelines here, as you can see here, and we try to map our identified goals with the UNIC regulation. So in other words, your project is ensured that you are compliant with UNIC regulations. The last but not the least step is your risk treatment and risk determination, risk treatment decision, where you are identifying each one of those threats that you have here. You pull them into this risk treatment table, and then you can actually select how you are mitigating those risks through the UNIC guidelines. You can select only the relevant ones here, like this, and then you can say, hey, I am actually compliant with these UNIC guidelines. So that way you are actually conforming to the standard. These are some of, and this is a table which pulls all the information from your previous steps. Like for example here, this is pulled from your damage scenario table, the SFOP rating. If there is any attack path analysis done for this, then you will also have the attack tree information. So let's go back and check this one. So here we did an attack path analysis for threat 42. So we should see that threat information here. Just give me a minute. Okay, it looks like we have some issue with the scroll bar here, but you should be able to see the threat, the attack vector, and the attack path related to the particular threat vector. Okay, and finally, last but not the least, we also support document report generation, where you can specifically select which sections of this whole threat modeling you would like to publish as a report, and that can be easily generated and published to the rest of the system, rest of the team for their review and feedback. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.